Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sidra Sayed, and I am Manager Business Relations at Brandsynario. Our topic for discussion today is how digitization is revolutionizing Pakistani market. And for this, we have invited Mr. Hani Haider from Easypaisa, Mr. Ibad Ahmed from Foodpanda, and Ms. Samia Salik from Karandaaz, Pakistan. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all of you. So I will quickly go over the format of the webinar. We'll start off with a brief introduction of our guest. After that, we'll just move to our panel discussion, and followed by some interesting and informative questions. Firstly, we have Mr. Hani Haider, Director Growth, Easypaisa. He has been part of Easypaisa's business team for last 4 years, and he has established a clear growth strategy for businesses. And then we have Mr. Ibad Ahmed from Foodpanda. He is the Director Q-Commerce and New Verticals, having 11 years of experience in downstream energy, automotive, and FMCG retail in various functions ranging from engineering, supply chain, business development, corporate strategy, and general management. And last but not the least, our lady, Miss Samia Salik. She is Manager Innovation, Karandaaz Digital. Before joining Karandaaz, Ms. Salik was associated with Jazz Pakistan, Telenor, and Launchpad Interactives. She has also experience of product pricing and analytics in telecommunication sector. Sorry. And so without further ado, let's begin. I'll just be questioning you guys regarding the topic. My first question to you, I'll start with Mr. Hani Haider. And my first question to you, Mr. Hani, is Easypaisa was the first digital payment system in Pakistan, and today it has the largest footprint in the country. Could you briefly tell us how the brand has evolved in Pakistan, their services, and what are its latest offerings?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much again for giving us this platform. So a little bit about Easypaisa. Easypaisa obviously started, with a need. Back in 2009, if you look at the general landscape of Pakistan, the underbanked or the unbanked population of Pakistan was almost at about 68%. Now, this is 68% of the total adult Pakistani population. So this is the gap that we saw initially. These are the people who did not have ways to send money or to perform certain transactions other than the cash transactions that they had availability for. Back in 2009, obviously the branch banking network was also limited to about 8,000 branches roughly across Pakistan. So this is 8,000 branches trying to serve a population, adult Pakistani population of about 175 million. So, we saw an immense opportunity here where, service could come in. Obviously, at that point, we were, part of the Telenor group. We're still part of the Telenor group, but, certain things have changed over the last couple of years. But, back in the day, we saw an opportunity where we could, provide a service to formalize this unbanked unbanked population, which was currently doing transactions, money transfer transactions predominantly through informal means. So, the first step that we took was to, ensure that, we had a much wider retail network, which started with about 15,000 retail outlets, 15,000 retail plus franchise outlets, where customers could come in with their cash in hand and give this particular cash to the retailer sitting on the counter, and the retailer would then transfer this money across Pakistan to the other retailers sitting in the receiving parts of the country. Over a period of time, we grew from just a money transfer service to providing other payments use cases, mostly backed by telco use cases. So, when we talk about telco-based use cases, we talk about easy loads and bundle subscriptions. And then obviously we diversified into utility bill payments as well. So, on the one side, you had the cash currency on which you could, complete these transactions. But for that, obviously, you had to, go to a particular branch, a particular outlet to perform these transactions. What we were offering was essentially convenience. Customers could do these transactions from the convenience of their home, and they did not have to, visit any such, outlets. So once we had established those core payments use cases, this is about 2014. This is where we started diversifying into other payments use cases, because obviously the opportunity even at that point was immense. We had grown our retail network to 78,000 retailers, across Pakistan. Money transfer was bringing in new customers to the platform. But apart from money transfer and these core telco use cases, we saw an immense opportunity where we could offer customers other payments opportunities through our platform. This is where we launched the Easypaisa app, and the application in itself, made sure that we cashed in on the growth in smartphone population, as well as the growth in telecom subscribers. So the 4G, 3G customers were growing at a phenomenal rate. The smartphone penetration within Pakistan was growing at a phenomenal rate. We thought this was the right time to move into the platform direction, where we established our app and we started, putting in more payments use cases within the app. In 2017, there was an inflection point. The inflection point, which I sort of touched upon earlier. This is where, apart from the knowledge that we already had on the basis of the Telenor Group being one of the biggest telecom companies in Pakistan, we also started receiving infrastructure as well as information help from one of the biggest payment service providers across the globe, which was the Alibaba Group. So in 2017, the Alibaba Group, through its investment wing and financial, invested in Easypaisa, because obviously they saw a huge potential in growth within the Pakistani market as well. Once that investment came through, we started, investing in our infrastructure and obviously creating those railroads on which we could then move into the retail payments market, as well as the B2B payments market. So the first primary focus for us was obviously to ensure that wherever a customer goes to currently pay through cash and avail certain services or buy certain products, our currency, which was the digital currency, was also available. Customers through the Easypaisa app could then make those payments to those retailers, buy those products instantaneously. And on the retailer side, there was also convenience, because the settlement, which is one of the biggest barriers if you're paying in cash as opposed to a digital currency, the settlement was instantaneous. The money was being transferred from the customer's Easypaisa account to the retailer's merchant account. So this was the second influx, which allowed us to expand on our payment services. And currently we're looking at a wide variety of services being offered within the Easypaisa app. Apart from e-load, bundle subscription, utility bill payments, we have excuse me, other services which are related to governmental payments. If you have a traffic challan, if you have your car vehicle token tax payments, if you have your license subscription payments, if you have certain tax payments that you need to make, all of those payments can be made through the Easypaisa app. We also started onboarding certain core bank use cases within the app. So customers can now subscribe to certain insurances through the Easypaisa app. They can subscribe to a savings account through the Easypaisa app, and obviously they can subscribe to a consumption or a productive loan through the Easypaisa app. So these are the three core banking services as well. So, from 2009 to 2022, our, strategy over the years has, changed. Obviously, it has evolved due to the kind of customer expectations, as well as the brand recall. Easypaisa is a brand name which everyone knows about in Pakistan. If you it's synonymous with money transfer. But the real challenge for us was to ensure that move is to ensure that we moved out of that resonance and moved into the payments landscape. And that payments landscape, whether it be online payments on certain websites, you have the Easypaisa, checkout, whether it be retail payments, which is, on ground brick and mortar stores, or whether, they become part of the B2B network. So the B2B payments were also, added into the Easypaisa platform. And this is something that has, I feel, revolutionized the digital payments market within Pakistan. What we're currently working on is obviously to ensure that the retail landscape is becoming a lot more seamless. The retailers, you previously had to register a Easypaisa merchant account in order for them to receive payments from customers. But with certain new products coming into the market, backed by the payment switch with the state bank, the regulator has launched RAST. We have certain payment products which are going to be launched this month. Specifically the person-to-person QR payments. So essentially, any retailer can just simply download an Easypaisa app. They can open their app and create their unique QR payment identity, and then start receiving those payments instantaneously. There are no API injections. There are no requirements for lengthy documentation process to receive the merchant identity. It's instantaneous. So this is something that we feel is an influx point within our industry, which will really propel those retail payments forward.
It was quite informative, but I'll move on, and my question would be with my other two guests. What would you like to say on today's topic on behalf of your company? How digitization is revolutionizing the Pakistani market? Like, I would start with Mr. Ibad.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Sidra. Thank you, Brandsynario, for providing the platform. I think it has, in terms of what digitization means, it has to be linked to what it does for people. At the end of the day, it is people's lives which get impacted, and hopefully in a positive way. And I think the biggest impact creation has been about simplifying life and delivering convenience. At the end of the day, this is what everyone who is in the digitization circle is doing. They're simplifying people's lives. They're sparing up, valuable time that they could have spent doing something productive, spending time with their families or at work or doing whatnot, as opposed to doing a chore also, which could have taken away that time. And I think this is how we look at ourselves as well. I think the Foodpanda journey has been very, very interesting, whereby a company which started off as being Pakistan's number one food delivery app, it kind of veered away and transitioned into becoming its number one hyper local marketplace. And I'd just like to spend a bit of time talking about what I mean by that. And what I mean by a hyper local marketplace is a place where vendors, be they restaurants, be they grocers, be they pharmacies, be they, for example, whatever specialized shop that you have, maybe a flower shop or whatnot, someone gets an opportunity to extend their services beyond immediacy that they have. For example, perhaps they're only recognized within the first 1.5 kilometer. And then what Foodpanda is now trying to do is to give them that opportunity to expand their services to a radius of 4 to 6 kilometers. And this is what I mean by hyperlocal marketplace, whereby there is genuine value addition. A retailer gets an increased size of the pie by attracting customers that they were perhaps previously unable to attract. And people also get a lot of variety and choice. So instead of that challenge of taking out your automotive and spending fuel, finding parking, and then walking, and then perhaps also, especially during COVID, what happened was contact started becoming restricted. People were unable to interact as much as they previously used to do, and those services are now available to you at your doorstep. So I think this is essentially how digitization, at least for us, has started playing a key role. One other thing that we are very proud of was how during peak COVID, we did not let shops, more importantly, restaurants as an ecosystem, close down. There was this time whereby people felt that they're going to lose their entire livelihoods because they would lose access. And we were there, and we played our small role in keeping that part of the economy alive. Not just that, obviously, we also worked on contactless deliveries and payments in terms of educating our rider base to try to minimize the interaction as much as possible, so that there was no chance of COVID spreading through that channel. So, yeah, I think digitization does a lot. At the end of the day, it is about simplifying lives and delivering convenience.
So I would like to ask Ms. Samia about the same topic, how digitization is revolutionizing the Pakistani market. What do you have to say?
Hi Sandra, Assalamualaikum. Thank you for having me. So, like Ibad also mentioned, so digitization is all about simplifying the lives of people, right? So, it's a fact that economies thrive on efficiency, and digitization is basically one of the major kind of steps towards creating efficiency. जब efficiency होगी तो जाहिर है businesses बेहतर perform करेंगे, there will be GDP में increase होगा, economy बेहतर strive करेगी. So that is what primarily digitization does. For Pakistan, while I believe that we are still very, very far from that stage जहाँ पे हम कह सकें कि हम पूरी तरह digitalize हो गए हैं, लेकिन we are definitely on the right path, and we are definitely working towards a digital economy as an industry, as a country altogether. So for me, I think, and for Karandaaz at least, we believe that payments is a major chunk in the value chains that needs to be digitized. But we also believe that payments standalone cannot be an enabling factor if we want complete efficiency to be seen. We want that there should be value chains that are completely digitized, e-commerce, agri, जहाँ पे बहुत सारा cash already circulate कर रहा है बहुत सारा cash already circulate कर रहा है. So there is a huge opportunity for digitalization there. In Pakistan, COVID, if you ask me, in some ways has been a blessing because of COVID, there were innovative ways जिसके through हम businesses कर रहे हैं. People have started to work remotely. People have started to value life, work-life balance, quality of life more than they did before. New jobs have been created. Digitalization will always create new jobs. Foodpanda, for example, is one example who actually, so home chefs आ गए, e-commerce में बहुत सारे development हुई, बहुत significant development हुई. So all of these things basically indicate that yes, we are on the right path and we are going to revolutionize, but there are more steps that need to be taken. And even if you look at the global numbers and the stats, जो भी economy बहुत अच्छा perform करी होगी, जिनके GDPs बहुत high है, वो actually बहुत significantly उनका major chunks है वो digitize हुआ है. So digitalization is the key to job creation. It is the key for efficiency, and that is what I think everybody in the industry right now has finally realized, and that is what we're all working towards. Be it Easypaisa or Jazz Cash, or be it Foodpandas or e-commerce Daraz, etc. और Karandaaz Pakistan. हमारा agenda developmental होता है, बाकी commercial entities हैं. So हम उस तरह से role play कर रहे होते हैं where we pick sides कि okay, do we want to enable the sector or do we want to work on the demand side? Currently, as an organization, we want to enable the sector. We want to facilitate these entities who are already doing a wonderful, wonderful job. And we want to see how we can kind of, bridge the gap between the challenges and the opportunities, and how we can make the digital journey and the digital payments journey simpler and easier for the underserved markets.
Thank you so much, Samia. Talking about the challenges, I have a question for Mr. Hani from Easypaisa. How How challenging has it been for easy paying on Brianna stores for digital payments? Like keeping in mind the business model for retail store or supermarket is different from Kriana store. Like they have instant payment and everything, but when it comes to Kriana store, they give paise like हम उनसे किस्त पे भी ले सकते हैं. They give you bulk buying वगैरह वाली options. तो इसमें आपको कितनी difficulties आई थी और क्या challenges आपने face किए थे?
The Kriana store obviously is a different ball game altogether.
Yeah.
The challenges that we face mostly, it's important to recognize how the system works. So for a Kriana store owner, it's important for him or her to receive that cash payment over the counter, because that is the cash in the till that he utilizes to further buy his inventory, because that
Yeah.
distributor is going to come in at the end of the week, and they are going to need that cash inventory to replace the stock on the shelf, or to replenish it to continue business. What the major challenge for us was obviously the what we call the latency, the delay between a cash on payment is right there in the till, and he can utilize that. A digital payment
Mm.
took some time to settle. The settlement process from the account, from the customer's account to the merchant's account, initially was a challenge for us. And obviously asking that Kiryana store to provide certain documentation in order to register itself as a Easypaisa merchant, that was also a barrier, because of most of these Kiryana store owners, they don't want to expose a lot of their information for the relevant tax authorities. Most of their
Mm.
businesses are pertaining to cash on counter, and they don't feel safe, and maybe rightly so, by exposing to a lot of information towards certain regulatory authorities. So the challenge for us was twofold. One was to ensure that the Kiryana store owner does not have to the settlement for that amount is instantaneous. The registration process is seamless, and to ensure that the documentation is sufficient to fulfill all regulatory requirements, but it does not become a barrier or a burden for the Kiryana store owner. So the first step, obviously, for us was to ensure that the settlement process was instantaneous. As soon as the amount left the customer's account, it got settled into the Kiryana store's owner's Easypaisa account instantaneously. So we first overcame that barrier. The second barrier, obviously, was to ensure that the registration process for the Kiryana store owner was seamless as a Easypaisa merchant. So, in order to do that, we had to come up with a new product, which is something that I've touched upon already, which was, the person-to-person QR payment acceptance. So a unique QR code for each Kiryana store owner, which they can present. The customer will scan it through the Easypaisa app, and they don't need to, register through an offline mechanism by getting an RSM there, sending in their documents, those documents being vetted, but they can just
Mm.
simply download the Easypaisa app, create that QR, and with minimum KYC information on the Easypaisa app, they can start accepting those digital payments. The third point was obviously to ensure that we came up, we overcame that barrier of the retail store owner, or the Kiryana store owner rather,
Mm.
facing that barrier of exposing too much information to organization which might be shared with the regulatory authority. So
Yeah.
for that, obviously, when you open up a Easypaisa account, there are certain KYC regulations, know your customer regulations that we fulfill. So their NIC number, their mobile phone number, their mother's maiden name, certain other pieces of information are also part of that process. We launched another product recently, which is known as the Asan Digital account, which basically
Mm.
means that if they choose to give a higher level of information, then what we will
Mm.
do for them is give them higher deposit ratios, higher deposit volume, higher cash out volume, and overall higher balance maintenance volume. So within a Asan digital account, you can maintain a balance of about 10 lakh rupees. Your cash withdrawal, withdrawal, which is something that they would utilize to pay the distributor, is also not charged at this certain point. So they can utilize our ATM card to cash out that money and pay the distributors, or directly do an IBFT transfer to the distributor's account, and then again they get charged a very minimal amount. So this is something that these were the barriers that we've addressed in order to cater to that particular Kiryana store market. One thing which is becoming very relevant, which I'd like to touch upon as a challenge overall for digitization, and I think Samia also touched upon this, is that whenever we're making policy level decisions at a governmental level, there are three major regulatory authorities. You have the State Bank of Pakistan, you have the SECP, and then you have the FBR. But majority of these regulations, obviously, COVID was an influx point for the entire industry. Everyone was on the digitization agenda, and there were some very good regulatory strategies which were taken up by the State Bank and the SECP. So these working groups were working in close coordination with the branchless banking as well as the branch banking teams. But one part of this decision relied a lot upon the tax authority, FBR. Unfortunately, um, the Pakistan is one of the few countries in the world where the cost of data is extremely low. It's it's about 200 rupees a month per user. So that's minimal as compared to the region. But the cost of data being low does not really enhance the overall penetration of data usage, because the fact that the tax authority still taxes data usage as a luxury, not a necessity. So 35% of the customers' total revenue is going towards the tax authorities. So and the case is same for smartphones. So smartphones are becoming a necessity. Locally produced smartphones are entering the market. Their numbers have expanded dramatically from 2020 onwards. But again, smartphone being a necessity, but it's still being taxed as a luxury. So you pay a huge amount, each consumer pays a huge amount to get that particular smartphone. And those are one of the few challenges that we need to address. So while the State Bank and the SECP, specifically SECP, has worked incredibly on the SMB side, they've created certain policies which are very lucrative for startups and businesses. Similarly on the State Bank side, but the tax authority needs to be part of that working group. They need to also ensure that the growth which we've seen in the last decade continues to go on an upward trajectory, because certain regulations do hamper the overall growth of digitization within the Pakistani market.
So my next question for you is, where do you think Easypaisa has an edge over other digital payment services? Like, what is Easypaisa's USP?
So if you look at the payments market currently, whether it's Jazz Cash or Easypaisa, the portfolio or the basket of services that we provide are almost similar. There might be a few unique services which provide Easypaisa or Jazz Cash certain form of differentiation in certain industries, but overall the basket of services is the same. What we're currently working on is to ensure that our core products and services, services like bill payment, services like bundle subscription, this is where we want to add value to the customer's life cycle, right? So with almost a 11.5 million base, which is login active on a daily basis, we have a huge amount of data coming in from these customers, the kind of cash in volumes that they have, the kind of consumption patterns that they have, what are they spending their money on. We want to utilize this information in order to create create what we call a competitive moat between us and our competitors, right? So if I were to give you an example in very simple terms, Currently, you can subscribe to a bundle from JazzCash or Easypaisa. But let's say Easypaisa comes to you and gives you information on the basis of your last four subscribed bundles. So, Easypaisa comes back with, a tip for a user and tells them that, listen, you've been subscribing, weekly bundles, and you subscribe 4 weekly bundles in a month that cost about 600 rupees. And within those weekly bundles, you get about 60 GB of data, right? But what if you subscribe a monthly bundle, which is costing you 500 rupees, but is going to give you about 75 GBs of data? Is that information worthwhile to you? Similarly, on the utility bill payment side, we all know, we've been through the summer months. We know that the summer bills are, phenomenally higher than the bills we receive during the winters. So what if Easypaisa was to come up with a service where they, go to their customers and tell them about, the kind of bill payment velocity that they have, and we create, in the most simplest language, what we call a committee. So let's say you invest 11,000 rupees a month with Easypaisa, and then you forget about your bills. We will pay your bills for you. That'll be an auto subscription. So we know the average amount of bills that you're paying. We know, the highest amount that you pay in a month. We know the lowest amount that you pay in a month. We can break that down over a period of 12 months. Take that amount from the customer every month, and they don't need to worry about that bill shock in the summer months. So, these are the kind of differentiations that we're trying to create moving forward on a platform like Easypaisa.
Okay. As you said, you offer these bundle services, utility bill payment for people like normal people. I'd like to know what role is Easypaisa playing to promote use of technology in health, education, and agriculture?
As we know, I think if you read the current report on Agri, which has been published by the State Bank of Pakistan, Agri-tech is a vertical which is growing phenomenally. This is a vertical where most banks are also investing in, where most of their productive loans are going towards. And I mentioned how Easypaisa has a very robust productive loan portfolio. So what is the difference between a productive loan and a consumption loan? So a productive loan is a loan which we give out to customers, which they utilize to invest in certain businesses, and they create a certain economic activity against those businesses. So for Easypaisa, our strategy is clear that we want to enable these customers to empower these businesses to be able to have running credit facility, in which they will be able to invest more in their businesses, expand their footprint, and give better services to their customers. So that's a productive loan side and that is something that we're working aggressively, especially within the agricultural vertical. On the other side, we have a consumption loan, which is essentially a ready cash facility available to certain, customers within the Easypaisa universe, and that obviously the amounts for the consumption lending are similarly lower. These could be, more similar to, microfinance loans, and these can be applied to within seconds within the Easypaisa app. The processing time is very little, and again customers get to have this ready cash value to fulfill their current or short term payment needs. When we talk about the health sector, obviously we have certain alliances with organizations, new tech startups like Sehat Sahara, where Sehat Sahara is providing certain services to consumers. But how do the customers process those payments to Sehat Sahara? That's where Easypaisa comes in. So Easypaisa becomes an enabler for all payments, whether it's through the agri industry or the health industry, or maybe even the insurance industry. So that's the bridge that we're trying to make, so that customers, you have the conventional way of going to visit a doctor or buying a insurance policy or getting a loan. You need to visit a brick and mortar store or a place to get those services. What Easypaisa does is to digitize those payments so those services can be availed by those customers.
Perfect. Acha, I have a quick question for you. As we all know, there is a huge gender divide when it comes to digitization, or in other words, women are not that tech savvy in Pakistan as men. So, how is Easypaisa enabling women to deal with this? And are we giving them any kind of training, or any sort of like, are we helping them in any sort of way? Quick question, please.
First thing, I don't think it's a matter of capability. So women are, as far as our strategy goes, they are as tech savvy as any other gender within our audience base. So what we want to do is to ensure that we remove those barriers. Removing those barriers, meaning that if they are to any particular reason, if they are confined to a certain location, so they have certain barriers of leaving their households in order to go open up that account, or go cashing, or to go to that retailer to cash into their accounts in order to use our payment services. We're trying to break those barriers as Easypaisa. So the major premise behind the Asan digital account was also to ensure that a customer who opens level 0 account sitting at home just downloading the app, they do not need to go to a retailer to do a biometric verification in order to upgrade their account to an L1 account, and then continue to do those transactions. They can do the in-app BVS. So we have this facility specifically targeted towards closing this gap, getting more women to perform those transactions from the comfort of their home. So they can do that in app BVS. Sorry, yes.
I was just adding to it. So the app is generally easy to use. You're trying to say.
Absolutely, it's as easy as having internet connectivity. There are about 122 million broadband subscriptions in Pakistan. Similarly, 122 million 4G and 3G customers in Pakistan. And if we look at the current census, we have about 195 million SIMs within Pakistan as well. So the access to data, the access to connectivity is already there. So when they have this access to connectivity, our app, and obviously I've talked about the smartphone penetration as well. So they have access to those smartphones. But our app, what our app does is on that smartphone with that connectivity, it gives women the space to, perform those transactions without having to rely on certain male members of the family. So they can create their account, they can verify their accounts from home. If they want to do a cash in, we have a doorstep facility. They can call in that doorstep facility, cash into our account. That's obviously powered through a partner, and then they can start doing those transactions. And then obviously when we talk about women in the space of small businesses, especially within the rural landscape, for them to expand their services, deliver beyond certain geographical limits and receive payments beyond certain geographical limits. That's where Easypaisa comes in to make sure that they are able to receive those payments and are also able to provide those products to their customers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hani. Now moving on to Mr. Ibad, I have a question that with the rise in inflation and the consequent price hike, a lot of local businesses and some major startups have had shut down their grocery delivery businesses recently. How difficult is it has been for Panda Mart? And what are some of the factors behind the brand's resilience during these difficult economic times? As you mentioned, आपका जो कोरोना के टाइम पे बिजनेस है, आपने कभी किसी को मतलब शट डाउन नहीं किया, एंड आपने हमेशा बिजनेस अपॉर्चुनिटीज वगैरह प्रोवाइड करी हैं. तो व्हाट इज द फैक्टर बिहाइंड दिस ब्रांड्स रेजिलियंस?
So I think there are multiple factors. One is obviously your business strategy and how you go about designing a business model. sometimes we have this, let's say, misnomer around an overall category just because we think everybody is conducting business in the same way. So I think it is starkly different from player to player based on the strategies that they adopt. I feel that from a business strategy perspective, one of the things that has really helped us out, at least as a Q-commerce player, has been that number one, we went for direct, partnerships with key CPG and FMCG players. We were not thinking of working our way from the bottom of the food chain, first buying from another retailer or working with a wholesaler or working with a distributor. From the outset, Panda Mart said, or we as a leadership team decided that we were going to do all our sourcing directly from principals and brands. And what that does is that it positions you better in terms of resilience, in terms of the margins that you dictate. Otherwise, if you're working with multiple other players down the food chain, then clearly you will be challenged on the operating cost front. So I think there was some of that. I think there was a lot about the philosophy through which we worked. I think some kudos not just to the local team, but also the regional teams that we work with in Singapore, the central teams that we work with from a mothership Delivery Hero based out of Berlin. So there were learnings on implementations based on the different markets that we operate out of. बहुत फायदा होता है उसका, right? Like there is a library that is available to you, and you can kind of leverage off that rather than just learn from your own experience. You can go and talk to somebody else on how to run a business and how they're doing it in a different country. I think we had the access to that as well. And lastly, I think it's just overall philosophy. I think we were always very, very cautious. We were not going out into the open markets to access capital. We were not working with VCs. Obviously, all our needs were being funded through the Delivery Hero Central Treasury. So we had to be very, very prudent in terms of spend. अब चाहे वो मैं आपसे बिजनेस मॉडल के पर्सपेक्टिव में बात करूं, मैं चाहे आपसे ये कहूं कि जी हमारा रिगर क्या है ऑपरेशनली हमारे वेयर हाउस ऑपरेशंस के अंदर, हमारे सेंट्रल वेयर हाउसेस के अंदर, caring about what to deploy in terms of a spend, even before the budget, even before, for example, the changes to electricity rates or rising fuel costs, etc. We were very clear that we have to run a tight ship, which meant that do we know how many chillers, for example, do we have in every store? How many do we need to be running? What temperature do they need to be running at? These seem to be very, small details, but I think retail or e-tail in our case is all about detail, and you cannot miss out the details. So I think there was a lot of that. In addition to that, I would also say that some of it is just purely based out of resilience. I think it takes a lot of grit, and we've tried as a team, especially with the human resources department, to work on building that in. And what I mean by that is sometimes tough things are going to punch you in the gut. So I was saying that sometimes things are going to get tough, and you're going to get punched in the gut. But what is important is what have you done in the design of your business model that you'll be able to get back up, or at least to be able to eat that punch. अगर आपका डिजाइन जो है वो थोड़ा सा रेकलेस है, तो फिर आपको प्रॉब्लम होगा. अगर आपने डिजाइन के वक्त ही आपने सोचा है कि रिगर कैसे बिल्ड इन किया जाएगा, फिजिकल प्रूडेंस कैसे बिल्ड इन की जाएगी, तो then probably you can weather the storm regardless of when the going gets tough.
As you mentioned, you have a concrete business, pura jo aapka base hai, that is very strong and everything, like you know where you are targeting and who you are targeting. So my question, what would you say is Panda Mart's USP?
I think in terms of the USP, one thing was very clear for us, that we would not work on differentiating ourselves on price. It is that that ganda vortex, अगर आप इसमें slip कर गए ना, तो बस इस के अंदर you're just gonna go down a slippery slope, and there is no end to that. And we said that we can't do that. What we have to try to accomplish, and obviously the journey is far from over. Are we the absolute best in terms of delivering experience? Probably the answer is no. I think we deliver a lot of great experiences, but then sometimes we do have a bungle up here and there. But at least from a mental thought process, positioning यही है कि dazzle through experience, deliver convenience, seize occasions. छोटी सी बात है, all of Pakistan is about, I would say now, three or four big things. It is about sports, especially cricket. It's about music. It's
Mm.
now increasingly becoming about esports and gaming. And how
Mm.
can we bring those communities together and rally them around food? How can we rally them around impulse snacking, etc.? And I think that is something that we are seizing more and more on, the importance of the marketing calendar, the importance of celebrating occasions,
Mm.
and then use that as a USP in terms of bringing people together rather than just try to bank on price. So at the end of the day, we are for people. We where we aspire to be. I think this is the best way I would like to phrase is it is that once all hope is lost, Panda Mart ideally comes to the rescue, right? Like 10:30, 11, all shops are shut down,
Yeah.
and you have a crying baby, and you want diapers. Where do you go? What happens? How can we help you to be a better you? This is the way I look at it. And obviously, there is still quite some distance that we have to cover. But how
Mm.
can someone whose job is to get their kids ready for school the next day, and they have
Mm.
forgotten to have, bread and eggs or dairy products, how do
Mm.
we make sure that if they did that slight bungle up, how do we
Mm.
make sure we make them a better parent, because that's what they were supposed to do. So we ideally want to do a job for someone which helps them to be a better version of themselves. I think this is how we would want to distinguish ourselves in terms of
That.
delivering convenience. In terms of,
Uh,
for example, I would say one very important thing, which is also very important in our adoption journey, is dual career
mm.
couples. There was a time, probably 8 to 10 years back, performing groceries used to be a ritual. Families used
Mm.
to do it together on a Saturday or a Sunday. They used to go to a mall, do the groceries, then probably have some food outside. Now you ask the same couples, 10 years or 15 years down the road, this is
Mm.
not a recreation. This is a waste of time. Even their kids don't want to do it because they have better things to do than to go to that fun land in the mall. They would rather just be with their devices or with their friends at home. And this is precisely where we come in, and this is, I would say, the USP of Panama. Yeah.
And also keeping in mind the long queues we had to face and all the traffic, keeping
Yeah.
the traffic in mind. Acha, as you mentioned price, Piche, so tell us about your distribution network. How many warehouses do you have, and where do you generate most sales from? Is it like metropolitan cities, top tier, second tier cities? Like where? Like from where?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Sidra. So we have close to 50 stores spread out, and we have 6 enabler central warehouses to support those 50 odd stores in 6 cities. Um,
Mm.
Clearly, adoption is higher in some areas than others.
Yeah.
Um, but मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि प्रॉब्लम ये होता है कि डिजिटल इकोसिस्टम में काम करने वाले जो ऑपरेटर्स होते हैं वो एक दूसरे को कंपटीशन समझने लगते हैं. आई थिंक दिस इज देयर बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम. What we are
Mm.
still battling against is changing minds. We have not क्रॉस द अडॉप्शन जर्नी. जितना जल्दी हम इस बात को रिकग्नाइज करेंगे उतना हम सबके लिए बेहतर है. अडॉप्शन अभी भी चैलेंज है. हाउ डू यू
Mm.
टेल समवन हु गोज टू अ रेस्टोरेंट टू से यू कुड एक्चुअली हैव दिस in the same shape or form delivered to your doorstep? How does someone who used to go to a supermarket or to a superstore कि यार ग्रोसरीज आपके घर पे आ सकती हैं? It is not each other. जितना ज्यादा आप इस तरह सोचेंगे उतना पाई छोटा रहेगा. It is about understanding that the pie has to be about digitization and simplifying lives across the board. We are still at that adoption leg. We should not be thinking of each other as competition. We are actually there to support each other to build a category. The category which is getting built right now, digital categories, चाहे वो quick commerce है, जो भी है. So I think we're still very much there. Obviously, we see that adoption, like I think Hani was mentioning, as well as I think Samia was also mentioning, in the Middle East, it is much easier to get that adoption when you have great purchasing power parity, and you have good GDP per capita, तो adoption आसान होती है. हमारे पास भी यही हमें नजर आता है कि obviously tier 1 cities के अंदर purchasing power is different than tier 2, which is different than tier 3. So adoption remains a bit of a challenge, especially in direct to consumer kind of businesses. It takes longer. It's a bit of a journey. but we're not giving up that soon. I think somebody has to start from somewhere, but clearly, obviously, still tier one demonstrates more adoption and more revenue generation right now as compared to tier two, tier three.
Yeah, you mentioned about the adopting the plans and everything. I have a question. Innovation and constant reinvention are the keys to stay afloat when it comes to like digital business. And keeping this in mind, what are Pandamart's plans ahead? Like for instance, for 5 years, coming 5 years.
Yeah. That's a very good question, Sidra. But I would like to take one step back and talk about overall market का challenge क्या है, very briefly. Challenge है trust. जो players या operators ने भी करना है वो उन्होंने trust achieve करना है. Why don't more people do digital journeys right now? Because somewhere in the back of people's minds is, if I do a digital transaction, whatever was supposed to happen, क्या वो हो जाएगा? How can I trust that it would take place? A parcel that was supposed to come to me, will it come to my doorstep? When it comes to my doorstep, will it be in the way, shape, or form that I expected it to be? तो ट्रस्ट इधर भी एक चैलेंज है. हर ऑपरेटर ने इसका सोचना है. हम लोग फॉर एग्जांपल इसके ऊपर बहुत काम कर रहे हैं. There is a very interesting survey which was done by both Morgan Stanley and Mintel. के largest aversion to buying groceries online was ultra fresh, which is fruits and vegetables. 84 to 86% of people in developed economies like the UK and the US don't do groceries online because they can't trust something which they have not touched from their hand. The things that they can touch with their hand, fruits, vegetables, and meat ke alawa, baki sari cheezen they are ready to do. So we said, okay, how are we going to go about that? Obviously, we are in this business, we have to do it. So what we've started to do is to, for example, get ourselves certified by neutral third-party bodies for handling and the whole ecosystem of getting the product, handling it, storing it, and then dispatching it. So just so we could say that our whole sourcing mechanism has become more concrete and more robust. And we are trying to do more and more and do a bit of marketing and PR around this, because we want people to be sure that they do not have a quality or a trust related challenge on our platform. So that's very key to what we are doing. In terms of, in general, what we are doing over the course of the next 5 years, we're looking at a lot of category extensions. I strongly feel that Pandamart, while the name Mart is there, it's perhaps grocery first, but it is not grocery only. We are very, very clear about this. I see a lot of category extensions, inshallah, happening into, for example, pharmacy, in terms of health and wellness products, in terms of even, for example, personal care and beauty and makeup. We have seen some really great traction and adoption over there. And we also see on a relatively limited scale, but also electronics and small home appliances. I think there's a lot of scope other than groceries for us to extend into those. So one part is obviously the category extension into other categories. The second part obviously is more and more means of automation. Automation at the dark stores and the central warehouses that we operate. How can we make the customer experience more consistent? And are there cases whereby the customer experience does not stay consistent because of some kind of manual handling? Now, this is easier said than done, because in some cases, actually, manual does it better, because your automation is at such a nascent stage that a bot or an actual physical robot cannot do it as well as a person handling can do it. So it's not easy, but we want to do kind of a mix and match and see कि वो कौन से processes है जहाँ पे manual is super important and will continue to remain so, and where is it that automation will bring consistency. So I would say these two places are the areas that we see ourselves extending into over a period of time. Last but not the least would be model extension. So right now we're doing everything ourselves. I personally think that what we would see potentially is doing it through other people. So essentially what I mean is, आज Pandamart के सारे stores Pandamart के अपने हैं. We not only run the whole ship, we also own it and we kind of manage it. I do think that there could be some interesting propositions whereby we would ask others to kind of help grow the brand for and with us. I see potential opportunities in that franchising space as well. But let's see where we go with that.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibad. I have now questions for Samia. I'm so sorry, Samia, for keep you waiting for this long.
No problem.
Question for you is, although number of deposit transactions and bank branches have increased over the year, about 40% of the money is in the form of cash. How can you bring this into the ambit of digital payment system? What role Karandaaz is playing in this? I want to know.
So, Sidra, first of all, yes, very rightly pointed out, a lot of economy is still cash-based. While the
Yeah.
number of deposits in bank accounts have increased, we, from a global perspective, हम third largest population है, जिसकी unbanked population बहुत ज़्यादा है, right? So,
Mm.
and our financial inclusion का number stands at 21%, which is actually quite low.
Mm.
हम so let me put it this way. So you can divide the population into three segments, right? एक तो हो गए जो आपके banked population है, जो कि है 21% banked है, जिनके पास formal bank account है. Then there are people जो कि unbanked है, right?
Mm.
जिनके पास basically इनकम नहीं है या उनके पास क्रेडेंशियल्स नहीं है, क्रेडेंशियल्स हैं तो वो इतने बेसिक हैं जिसकी वजह से वो प्रॉब्ली अकाउंट खोलने के अलावा ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं कर सकते और
Mm.
उनके पास यूज़ केसेस नहीं है, लिटरेसी नहीं है। सो ये वो कैटेगरी है जो कि करंटली अनबैंक्ड है। फिर एक
Yeah.
कैटेगरी वो है जो कि बैंकेबल है, राइट? जिसमें लोग उनके पास क्रेडेंशियल्स भी हैं, उनको यूज़ केसेस भी पता है, उनके रिलीजियस वैल्यूज़ अलाउ नहीं करते हैं कि वो बैंक में अकाउंट खोलें या फिर उनके इस तरह के व्यू पॉइंट्स हैं जहाँ पे दे डू नॉट agree with how the banks work. Yeah, they do not want to document their money, their wealth, all of those people. So Karandaaz as an entity focuses on the unbanked segment of the country. Why? Because we know कि वहाँ पे challenges हैं जो address किए जा सकते हैं, वहाँ पे challenges और opportunities lie करती है जिनको address करने की जरूरत है. Banks on the
Mm.
other hand इस पूरे market को approach करते हैं from the bankable side. So they will only kind of cater to people who have a bank account, and then they will build up products and services for those people जिनका बैंक अकाउंट तो है, एटलीस्ट आपका बैंक में अकाउंट खुला हुआ है, आपके लिए हम प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज बना सकते हैं. हमारी हम क्योंकि एक सेक्शन 42 कंपनी है, हमारा डेवलपमेंटल एजेंडा है, सो वी डू नॉट वांट टू कन्विंस somebody who knows everything and does not want to come into the financial formal fold by choice. We want to work for those people who are not banked and who have been missed out because they do not understand the use cases, they do not understand the value proposition in the use cases, they have income barriers, they do not know what else to do with an account once they have an account. सो दे डू नॉट, उनके पास इतने पैसे ही नहीं है कि वो कोई क्रेडिट हिस्ट्री बना सके जिसके लिए उनको एक्सेस टू क्रेडिट मिल सके. सो वो सारे जो चैलेंजेस है वो बहुत ज्यादा रियल है. देन वी बिलीव दैट फॉर दोज पीपल the biggest competition and the biggest barrier is cash. Cash is free and digital payments are not free, right? So the first thing that we want to kind of focus upon is how to make digital money as competitive as possible with cash. So Rust, for example, is one example जिसमें हम एक pro poor payment gateway जिसकी कोई cost नहीं है, आप हर transaction free of cost करते हैं. So that is one initiative जिसके ऊपर हम काम करें. So the biggest challenge that we feel working with different entities in the country is that cash के साथ compete करना बहुत मुश्किल है. उसमें फिर हानि ने एक point किया था taxation के ऊपर बात की थी. I also want to talk about that. Why? Because when you talk about bringing people into the digital payments ambit, when we talk about bringing people into the digital formal financial fold or even in the digital economy, the first thing that is a prerequisite is a pro digital tax regime. Until and unless आप स्मार्टफोन्स का टैक्स नहीं हटाएंगे, लोग स्मार्टफोन नहीं खरीदेंगे. इट्स नॉट अ लग्जरी, इट्स अ नीड. आपका डिजिटल तभी चल सकता है जब एक बंदे के पास स्मार्टफोन है. स्मार्टफोन के ऊपर जो इंटरनेट है उस इंटरनेट की क्वालिटी इस तरह की है कि वो कोई ट्रांजैक्शन करने के काबिल है, राइट? वो ऐसी ऐप यूज कर सकता है जो कि एक्चुअली जिसके थ्रू एक ट्रांजैक्शन हो भी सकती है. सो अनलेस द इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इज देयर, अनलेस द पॉलिसी एंड द टैक्स regime is there which is supportive of a digital payments ecosystem और digital value chain, तब तक ये सारी एफर्ट्स जो है वो एंड पे मल्टीप्लाई बाय 0 हो जाती है. बिकॉज आपने ऐप भी बना दी है, सो फिनटेक ने बहुत अच्छी ऐप बना दी है, इजी पैसा की बहुत अच्छी ऐप है, पर मेरे घर में अगर वो इंटरनेट पे चलेगी ही नहीं तो फिर मेरी जिंदगी में कोई चेंज नहीं आएगा. So I guess that is the biggest challenge that we feel कि exist करता है. और हम भी as Karandaaz we try to address कि हम access to market कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं for those unbanked people, हम women के लिए कैसे काम कर सकते हैं, हम एक pro poor system कैसे create कर सकते हैं, pro poor policies कैसे आ सकती हैं जिसमें basically एक average इंसान भी उसकी वैल्यू समझ सके कि डिजिटल में कितनी कन्वीनियंस और एफिशिएंसी है.
अच्छा, सामिया, as you mentioned about digital कि हमें शिफ्ट होना चाहिए, लाजमी है obviously ये. What are some of the Karandaaz's programs which are helping digitize the public and private sectors?
So हमारे different प्रोग्राम, सो कारांदाज के 4 वर्टिकल्स हैं जिसमें से मैं कारांदाज डिजिटल को रिप्रेजेंट करती हूँ. आई कैन टेल यू अबाउट द कारांदाज डिजिटल के प्रोग्राम्स. वी हैव अ पायलट टू स्केल प्रोग्राम वेयर वी काइंड ऑफ encourage entities to come forward. अगर उन्होंने एक पायलट रन किया when they want to scale up the operations, we are here to help them through a grant funding and through technical advisory also. So that is one program. We have challenge rounds जिसमें हम women centric challenge round भी करते हैं जिसमें हम access to market basically facilitate कर रहे हैं for women, which is the FIWC. Then there is the Fintech Disrupt Challenge जिसमें seed funding होती है for new startups जो कि fintech financial उसमें space में काम करना चाहते हैं. We have experiments with the public sector. There are different initiatives. We're already working with National Savings. We're working with SECP. We very closely work with SPP, जिसमें last is one initiative with SPP जिसपे काम हो रहा है. Digital banking regulation was another one. BISP की digitization के ऊपर भी काम हो रहा है. So public sector है, private sector है. Private sector में different programs है. All of the details are available on the website. So yeah.
अच्छा, एज हानी मेंशन के जब मैंने उनसे टेक सेवी की बात की थी, ही मेंशन के ही हैज मेड दी दे हैव मेड दी ऐप सो इजी टू यूज, लाइक ही कैन इट कैन बी यूज्ड बाय एनीवन. My question to you is, what role is Karandaaz playing in order to bridge the gender digital divide in Pakistan as well as reducing inequality?
So Pakistan again, unfortunately, 5 उन कंट्रीज में से जिनका जेंडर गैप बहुत ज्यादा है, राइट. सो उसमें मतलब हम है, हमारे अलावा इंडिया है, अब चाइना है, कतर है. अब इंडिया और चाइना तो बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ देयर साइज है, उनको बहुत ज्यादा एडवांटेज भी मिलता होगा, कई जगह पे डिसएडवांटेज. पाकिस्तान के पास वो लेवरेज नहीं है. सो हमारे लिए ये जो स्टैट है ये बहुत बहुत बिग है और बहुत सिग्निफिकेंट है और बैरियर्स भी बहुत ज्यादा है. सो लाइक यू ऑल्सो मेंशन द ऐप एंड हानी वाज आल्सो टॉकिंग अबाउट इट. सो स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम द बेसिक लेवल ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ऐप डिजाइन एंडिंग टूवर्ड्स के सेम ओनरशिप किसके ऊपर है, राइट. सो वो बहुत ज्यादा सिग्निफिकेंटली आपको डिफरेंसेस नजर आते हैं, डिस्पैरिटी नजर आती है बिटवीन मेन एंड विमेन. Women are not comfortable sharing their mobile number, for example, at any formal institution also. Why? Because और कल्चरल चैलेंजेस हैं. उसके अलावा यहाँ पे फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन में तो डेफिनेटली बहुत ज्यादा चैलेंजेस हैं. कुछ के घर के मसाइल है, कुछ की और लिमिटेशंस है. हमने रियलाइज किया है कि विमेन और एजेंट नेटवर्क एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता है जो कि विमेन को केटर कर सके. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल एज अ कंट्री वी नीड टू स्टार्ट आइडेंटिफाइंग एंड एक्नॉलेजिंग विमेन एज अ सेगमेंट जो कि प्रॉफिटेबल बिजनेस आपको देगा, right? So that is the first and the foremost thing. You need to treat the segment as a full potential segment जिसकी cost of business आप अंडरस्टैंड करें, जिसको आप समझें कि इनसे भी हमें उतना ही प्रॉफिट मिल सकता है जितना कि सर्विंग टू मेन का. एंड देन कम्स द पॉइंट कि आप उनको किस तरह से सर्व कर सकते हैं. हमारे पास कारंदाज में वी हैव द विमेन वेंचर्स प्रोग्राम जो कि बेसिकली चैलेंज राउंड है. वो इक्विटी फंड करते हैं, वो लोग लोन डेट फाइनेंसिंग करते हैं, हम स्मॉल बिजनेस लीडर्स को, बिजनेस women लीडर्स को सपोर्ट करते हैं. So we make sure that the businesses are not just owned by women, but they're also led by women. We have in our programs, we have very clear gender themes in which we invite fintech to come up with products and services that will address to women. Like you mentioned the app, we've worked with several entities over time, and we've kind of revamped their apps into gender sensitive apps. जेंडर का कंटेंट क्या होना चाहिए, उसकी मैसेजिंग क्या होनी चाहिए, उसके आइकॉन्स कैसे होने चाहिए, ऑल ऑफ दोस थिंग्स. सो यूआई यूएक्स प्रिंसिपल्स एग्जिस्ट करते हैं जिसके थ्रू आप जेंडर स्पेसिफिक कंटेंट क्रिएट कर सकते हैं. मार्केटिंग में पीपल आर जनरली नॉट वेरी पर्टिकुलर अबाउट इट, बट यू नो व्हेन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अ सेगमेंट दैट इज अंडरसर्व्ड, यू नीड टू first acknowledge its existence, and that shows in your advertisements, that shows in your app design, that shows in your UX, that shows in your channel. आपने एजेंट कैसा खड़ा किया हुआ है, चैनल कैसे खड़ा किया हुआ है, आप उस मार्केट को कैसे एड्रेस करें और कैसे नहीं करें. So all of those things I think will play a very significant role.
So I have one last question for you. This question is for all my guests. Question is, what are some of the challenges Pakistan face in order to become a digital driven economy, and how can they be overcome? My question is from you, Samia, first, and then I'll move further to the other guests.
So I think that the first and foremost thing, in my opinion, is that Pakistan. So when I started working at Karandaaz, I used to kind of, so हम भी देखते थे कि targets क्या. So national financial inclusion strategy बनी थी. उसके बाद एक strategy आई 100-day plan के बारे में, जिसमें basically digitization के ऊपर कोई बात हुई थी. But there is no national level plan for digitization. Be it for e-commerce, be it for Easypaisa, JazzCash, entities like us, anything. मतलब कोई targets नहीं है, कोई national plan नहीं है, और अगर है तो उसको follow नहीं किया जाता. So without accountability, without a follow-up, the plan basically does not kind of, serve the purpose. Then comes the infrastructure, like I mentioned. So there's no point of a digital economy if the internet is not working. इंटरनेट ऑफ इंटरनेट अच्छा नहीं है. सो वो एक बहुत मेजर फैक्टर है कि वेयर पीपल आर विलिंग. सो इट्स नॉट लाइक अ लिटरेसी. अब इस पॉइंट इन टाइम पे बिगेस्ट चैलेंज नहीं है. आप सर्वे करके देख लें, लोगों को फेसबुक यूट्यूब यूज करना आता है. सो इट्स ऑल्सो द हेजिटेशन टू काइंड ऑफ टुवर्ड्स फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस. व्हाई? बिकॉज लोगों को अवेयरनेस नहीं है उस तरह की, और चैलेंज होता है कि जहाँ पे आप इंटरनेट बहुत ज्यादा सिग्निफिकेंटली यूज नहीं कर सकते हैं, कंफर्टेबली यूज नहीं कर सकते. एंड देन कम्स ई-कॉमर्स. ई-कॉमर्स को माउंट करने के लिए कंज्यूमर प्रोटेक्शन बहुत वीक है, उसमें बहुत ज्यादा चैलेंजेस हैं. सो ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स दे प्ले अ वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट रोल कि किस तरह से आपकी पूरी की पूरी इकोसिस्टम को इकट्ठा करने में ये सारे लोग रोल प्ले कर रहे हैं. सो लाइक एंड माय लास्ट पॉइंट वुड बी लाइक द टैक्स regime. So you cannot expect a person to buy a smartphone if उसके ऊपर इतना ज़्यादा टैक्स उसको पे करना पड़ रहा है. You cannot expect a person to transact digitally if the same transaction can be done in cash for free, right? So overall the policy level changes required हैं, जो government के initiatives होते हैं, जो वो basically lead कर सकते हैं, जिसके through आप एक पूरे ecosystem को develop करते हैं, और ये सारे उसके building blocks हैं.
Perfect. I would like to move on to Mr. Ibad. Ajay, Ibad, I have the same question for you. What are some of the challenges Pakistan faces in order to become a digital driven economy, and how can they be overcome?
So I think I would say कि probably किसी भी country की overall जो macroeconomic growth है, उसके perspective में one thing which I have personally found helpful is one of my professors' frameworks. Antonio Fatas and Ilian Mihov, they were professors, and they came up with a 4I framework. The 4 I's are initial condition. The second is institutions. The third is investment. And the fourth is innovation. हम जिस frontier पे बैठे हैं सारे operators, we are at the innovation frontier. लेकिन हमें ये समझना जरूरी है कि innovation नहीं काम कर सकती जब तक कि इन्वेस्टमेंट ना हो. इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं आ सकती जब तक कि रोबस्ट इंस्टीट्यूशंस ना हो, और इंस्टीट्यूशंस नहीं काम कर सकते जब तक कि initial conditions ठीक now, and it has to happen in sequence. So I just go back. I love what Samia said, right? It's a lot about the infrastructure. It's about, are the roads broken? What are we doing about that? It's about कि अगर quick commerce होनी है, e-commerce होनी है, तो किसी ने तो road पर ही चल के आना है, and if they are making a commitment that they're going to deliver something same day or within 1 hour, etc. What is the ecosystem looking like? Road का infrastructure कैसा है? Internet का infrastructure कैसा है? Very interestingly, on both sides of the coin, like Samia mentioned, consumer protection अगर important है, तो also what about level playing field for investors? So what I mean by that is, how do we protect them? So it seems that we have overcome something. It has become easier for foreign direct investors to invest money. Is it easy for them to take out money back? Is it easy? Have we created that ease of doing business? Can someone really trust that if they put their money in Pakistan, will they be able to recover it back and get some return on it? I think we are some distance from there. And also, if I talk about taxation, I would say एक तो चीज ये है कि जी taxation होनी कितनी चाहिए. I'll say वो एक separate debate है, important debate है, लेकिन एक separate debate है. सबसे important चीज तो level playing field है. You have great operators coming in who are working on digitization, and essentially the challenge then becomes, do we have good contractual enforcement of rule of law? If certain rules or taxation etc will hold for certain players, but the rest of the market can continue to roam freely, then that is not a level playing field, right? Like you're trying to work on digitization of the ecosystem. If the traditional structure is not playing by the same rules as the digital players are, how are those digital players ever going to end up making money? At the end of the day, every investor wants a return. अगर एक शख्स ने फॉर एग्जांपल टैक्स पे करना है और कुछ और सेक्टर्स ने उस तरीके से उसको अप्लाई नहीं करना है, there will never be a genuine competition, and only innovation only comes when you have true competition where it is a level playing field. So I would say it is very important. I'll go back to what I said, the 4 eyes framework. Innovation can only happen if investment is there. Investment can only happen if the eye of strong institutions, rule of law, governance is there. And that relies on initial conditions, which is infrastructure and what was the initial state in which we started working. So the 4 eyes framework is kind of a good way of looking at it. हम जितना इसको robust बनाएंगे तो वो जो final eye of innovation है वो काम कर सकेगा, वरना otherwise it will remain a dream of some sorts that we will always keep chasing.
So I have the same question for Mr. Hani. What are some of the challenges Pakistan faces in order to become a digital-driven economy, and how can they be overcome?
I think both Samia and Ibad have touched upon that, and Ibad has, I think, hit the bullseye, because if you look at, there are two ways to look at digital growth or the digital or digitization of any country, whether it be Qatar or Estonia or Abu Dhabi. So the 4 pillars that we're looking at, they are the ones that drive your digitization within the country, right? The first pillar obviously is connectivity. Second pillar is infrastructure. The third pillar is innovation, and the fourth pillar, which is the most important, is a robust policy framework, right? In the previous government, we saw and we heard that there was at least a focus on delivering an agenda for a digitized Pakistan, right? And if you look at that agenda, if you look at that framework, it resides predominantly on these 4 pillars, right? But if you go into an introspective mode and look at these 4 pillars individually, if you look at connectivity, if we look at infrastructure, if we look at innovation, which is as culture, we nurture new talent. We all know that in Pakistan you have talent by the bucket loads. You have new entrepreneurs coming up with innovative and creative ideas to deliver a solution for problems that everyday individuals face. So if but all of the 3 preceding pillars that I've just outlined, they do not work if you don't have a robust policy framework on the ground. So if you have a robust policy framework, and I'm going to pick on that point again, that that policy framework needs to include your three governing bodies: your your banking regulatory body, which is the state bank; your small businesses regulatory body, which is the SECP; and your tax regime body, which is the FBR. So if that policy framework is is expanded on, if certain conditions are made, if certain barriers are removed and certain conducive conditions are made for players like Easypaisa, for players like Jazz Cash, for players like Foodpanda, for players like Karandaaz, and the many others within the market, the access to these services is going to be much easier to all of our customers. We talked about connectivity. We've already talked about the lack of infrastructure, especially it's a million less by the mile. As you move towards the rural states, as you move towards the rural part or the central part of Pakistan, the infrastructure is simply not there. And that's something that requires investment, that requires grants and subsidization, and a confirmed policy framework which allows and gives confidence to these network level players, who are able to then provide that connectivity to each and every corner of the country. A lot of people talk about 5G. I'm like, personally, I'm not a proponent of 5G. 5G comes in when you talk about the Internet of Things. When you have a short square mile area and you have 10 million devices that need to be connected. So you need to have lower latency, you need to have higher speeds, but we don't require that in Pakistan. In Pakistan, our per capita income, our per capita growth is quite low. So we need to look at how we can give access to 4G networks across the country, higher speeds of 4G networks across the country, to propel the infrastructure. And then from that infrastructure, you come down to innovation. Once you provide those railroads to the dynamic innovators, the thinkers, and the people who are actually at the forefront of innovation, then they are able to cater to that market. So if we were to encapsulate the entire conversation, this has to be driven from a framework of digitization, of growth driven through digitization, and that has to come from the policymakers.
Thank you so much, Hani. Thank you so much, Ibad and Samia, for being part of our panel discussion and sharing your valuable comments on the topic. That's it for now, and I'll catch you guys again soon.